In D&D, when we talk about defending the multiverse from all manner of threats, whether it be demons from the abyss or devils from the nine hells, something from the far realm, whatever the case is, regardless of setting with very few exception, the defenders of the multiverse are always celestials and the good-aligned creatures such as angels. However, in almost every case, the one thing that holds angels back is their strict moral code. It's not even a matter of honor to them, it's literally ingrained into their very being, into their essence. Asking an angel like a Solar to break cosmic law is like asking a person to live the rest of their life without breathing. It just isn't possible. Unless, of course, you have like a sick magic item or something, but you know what I mean. Now, when the right thing to do isn't necessarily the lawful thing to do, that is where the Gale steps in. Gale are knights errant of the celestial world. They are good aligned Eladrin, which means they are fey celestials. There's a whole bunch of lore. I'm sure AJ Piggett's done a video about it. Point being, they are cosmic creatures that fall into the same kind of classification that angels do. However, they are not bound by the same rules that angels are. They are one of few creatures that exist beyond the material plane that not only have a vested interest in what's happening there, but also truly care about its residents on a fundamental level. While a Solar, one of the great powerful archangels, might look down on a kingdom in the material world that is suffering due to famine or invasion from orcs or whatever the case may be, and say, in the grand scheme of things, a few dead humans doesn't even hold a candle to the crazy stuff that they are encountering on a daily basis. The Gale looks at that in much the same way that a human being would look at that and says, that suffering is unjust. Can I do something about this? Gales are extremely powerful agents of good, always willing to do the right thing, going above and beyond at even the cost of their own lives to ensure the safety of the mortals who inhabit the material world. They are an embodiment of chaotic good as an idea, and what exactly that means is something that we're going to unpack in a minute. Before we get into plot hooks and all the different ways you can use these guys in your campaign though, we're going to take a look at combat and see exactly what the Gale is capable of on the field of battle. The Gale is a CR-12 celestial creature. That's going to tell you a lot of information right away. They're pretty powerful, and whether serving as an ally or an enemy to your party, we're talking mid to early late game tiers of play here. Their entire identity is wrapped up in the idea of defeating evil, true evil, at any cost. And all of their mechanics and abilities and what they can do in combat very much reflect that. For starters, they exude an aura in 20 feet all around them, and this aura affects themselves as well as any of their allies. Anytime a creature with an evil alignment makes an attack roll against the Gale or one of its allies within its aura, that creature does so with disadvantage. It literally poses a greater challenge to an evil creature to cut down a Gale or one of its friends because they are so imbued with that positive energy and good vibes. However, their evil targeting abilities are not only defensive, they are also offensive. They have an ability which allows them to add an additional 2d8 radiant damage to every attack they make, even if it's with a non-magical weapon. They pick up a stick, that stick is now hitting for the stick's damage, plus an additional 2d8. They're also able to cast a slew of defensive spells and a couple offensive ones such as Lightning Bolt. These are simply meant to just supplement its already powerful abilities. As far as actually taking to the field of battle and where they're going to be and how they're going to fight, you're going to see the Gale front and center in that shining armor, exuding its aura all over its allies, spearheading the charge against the forces of evil. It wants to support its friends, and it wants to get in there with that great sword and just start cutting down anything that that gets in front of it. Gales do also carry spears with them, so they have an off weapon if something happens to their greatsword, and something they can throw if need be, and for whatever reason they're out of spell slots. At the end of the day, the Gale is going to fight very similarly to a powerful wizard with a lot of melee attacks. It's going to take advantage of the layout of enemies with its spells. If a bunch of guys end up in a line, you know a lightning bolt is going through there. And when it doesn't have something that it can do to great effect with any of its magic, it's going to be helping its allies and just making melee attacks. The most dangerous thing about a Gale, if you're going up against one, is actually going to be the other creatures around it, because the Gale is going to make them harder to hit. It is also going to be able to use its spells to heal them and keep them on their feet. So until the Gale goes down, you're fighting an uphill battle. Not to mention the fact that they're brilliant tacticians, but that brings us on to our next thing. Wait, just kidding. No, it doesn't. They also have a 90-foot fly speed. If the Gale chooses to break away from its ground-bound allies, it can fly 90 feet per round, which is extraordinarily fast. This thing can get up close and personal to whomever it wants to, pretty much whenever it wants to. And if it happens to be leading a group of creatures that are capable of flying, forget about it. Now, for the most interesting part about the Gale, in my opinion. The primary reason I was drawn to this creature and decided to do a video about it in the first place is because of how thematically interesting I think the Gale is. The great thing about Celestials and just outer planar entities in general is that they don't have the mortal element, or what we would probably refer to as the human element in our day-to-day language. This is both a blessing and a curse in terms of how we tell stories with them. It means that they don't have the same shortcomings or the same uncertainty about their nature that most mortals might have. They are literally formed around an ideal, and it is part of their essence. It is unchangeable within them, at least not without great cause. And for the Gale, that piece of their identity is good. There's a great conversation that introducing a Gale to your game will bring up with your players, which is what is more important, the day-to-day good, which is what the Gale is concerned with, or the greater cosmic good, which is what the Solar cares about. A Solar is liable to let an entire kingdom fall to an invading army being led by a dread necromancer because they can see in the grand scheme of things how that will work out for the better of the cosmic balance. To the people living inside of that city, that is an act of impossible cruelty. Knowing that Solar could come down and strike away all of those undead minions with a single stroke of its sword, but chooses to do nothing, is unexplainable. The Gale, on the other hand, might still have that cosmic perspective, but it chooses to intervene, knowing that this might have unfortunate consequences 1,000 years down the line. It doesn't matter. There are people hurting, there are people in trouble right now. Because of this, Gales don't act within this grand cosmic plan. They act on what they know is right. And there are a lot of really interesting stories to tell within that space, Is a Gale helping your party to achieve something that the Celestials have denied them help with because for that cosmic balance, right? And what does that mean for the relationship between Pelor and the Paladin in the party, where his god turned them away, but this Gale is coming forward to assist them in something it feels is correct. Conversely, it's also possible for a Gale to get wrapped up in something it believes is true, but perhaps it's been lied to or misled or fed some type of false information and is actually helping the big bad evil villain succeed in their ultimate plan. If you're running a game with one of those villains who likes to pull the strings behind the scenes, perhaps this Gale starts to intervene and this big villain says, that's going to be a problem. How can I turn this to my advantage? And they're able to twist that character's motives in a way that sets them against the party, believing they're doing the right thing. But big questions of morality aside, in terms of using a Gale in your game, they make excellent party patrons. Perhaps your adventuring party is set on the path to fulfill the goal of your D&D campaign by a Gale who, because of some other preoccupations, is not able to intervene themselves, but they enlist the party to help with something that they see happening in the world that they want to put a stop to. Or maybe you're running a game with a party who's a little bit of the morally gray side bordering on straight up evil. A gale would be an excellent introduction into your campaign for an interesting NPC that the party can interact with. Maybe it tries to sway them back onto the right path, and if they don't listen, the sword's coming out. Something else that I find extraordinarily interesting about the Gales is their disposition and the way they interact with mortals. They are truly kind souls, and they care for and love the people who live on the material plane. So much so, it actually says in the source book that Gales will become despondent and depressed if they're not able to visit the material plane somewhat frequently to visit friends and see and walk amongst the people who they so truly love. You would expect a character like that to be all sunshine and rainbows and very happy and uppity, but that is not the case. Gales often come across as standoffish at best, ice cold at worst. Many mortals who interact with Gales without truly knowing them, and even then sometimes, can view them as being quite asshole-ish. They put forth this aura of detachment, and it's not because they don't care, it's because they care so much that through a tremendously long lifetime as Celestials, not being able to die of old age, they have seen immeasurable suffering, and it just weighs on them so intensely that they have to keep their emotions in check lest they be constantly distressed over the state of the world and the injustices that they are unable to do anything about. And I find that very interesting to have a character who at first glance and at first meeting seems so cold, but in reality they care more than you can possibly imagine about the circumstances at hand. So who knows, maybe your party misconstrues what the Gale is all about because of this kind of cold disposition, and maybe much later down the line, the Gale kind of has a moment of vulnerability with them and they get to see truly how much this creature does indeed care for them. In any case, I think Gales are awesome, and whether you're using it as kind of a throwaway NPC or a one-off encounter, or they're playing a primary role in your game, give them a chance, check them out. They're very dynamic NPCs that you can include in your game, and they come from a really interesting race. So, if you do want to use this creature in your D&D game, I, of course, have got your back. There is a 5th edition conversion from 3.5 to 5e that I have done, which you can find in the form of a Google document in the description below. If you are one of my lovely patrons, there is also a fancy schmancy style stat block posted over there with the artwork and the Monster Manual 5th edition like column thingy. You've seen what the Monster Manual looks like. I don't have to tell you. But anyway, yeah, you can check that out there. Google Docs in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it immensely. And I will catch you guys very soon. Until the next one.